Welcome to Story Tender. Please hit subscribe. Thank you very much. Let the story begin. Chapter 1. The moment he froze. Ethan Cole had learned how to move without being seen, how to glide between polished tables and soft candlelight as if he were nothing more than a shadow dressed in black and white. The restaurant was one of the most expensive in the city, the kind of place where a single dinner could cost more than a month of rent, and every detail was controlled, from the temperature of the wine to the quiet hum of conversation that never rose above a murmur. Ethan balanced a tray of crystal glasses in his hand, his posture straight, his expression neutral, his presence deliberately forgettable. That was the job. That was what he had become. Just a waiter. The scent hit him first. It cut through the layers of perfume and expensive cologne like a memory that refused to stay buried. Soft, warm, and unmistakable. His steps faltered for the briefest second, just enough for the edge of the tray to tremble. He told himself it was nothing. Just another guest. Just another scent. But his instincts were already tightening, pulling him forward before his mind could catch up. Table 12. Private reservation. The host had whispered it earlier with a tone of quiet respect, the kind reserved for someone important. Ethan approached with his usual calm, his eyes lowered just enough to remain professional. And then he looked up. The world stopped. The tray slipped from his fingers before he even realized what was happening. Glass shattered against polished marble, the sound sharp and sudden, but it barely registered, because sitting there, framed by soft golden light, was Liam Carter. His Liam. Except not his anymore. Not for a long time. Liam looked different and yet exactly the same. His features were softer now, touched by something deeper, something heavier. But it was not his face that held Ethan in place. It was the curve of his body, the unmistakable, undeniable swell beneath the fabric of his shirt. Liam was pregnant. The realization did not come slowly. It struck all at once, a clean, precise truth that left no room for doubt. Ethan's breath caught, his chest tightening as every calculation aligned in his mind without permission. The timing, the last night they had seen each other, the way Liam had disappeared without a word afterward. It all collapsed into a single, unavoidable conclusion. The child Liam was carrying was his. Ethan could not move. Around him, the restaurant continued as if nothing had happened. Another waiter rushed to clean the broken glass. A manager's voice cut through the air, sharp with irritation, but distant. None of it mattered, because Liam lifted his head. Their eyes met. For a moment, something flickered there. A pause. A hesitation that felt like it might shatter everything open. But then it was gone. Liam's gaze passed over him as if he were nothing. As if he were just another stranger in a uniform. No recognition. No shock. No memory. Ethan felt something inside him go completely still. Not pain. Not anger. Just a cold, quiet emptiness that spread through his chest like ice. In that single glance, he understood something far more terrifying than the pregnancy. Far more unsettling than the years they had lost. Liam did not remember him. To Liam, he was no one. And yet, the child growing inside him carried Ethan's blood, his scent, his existence. Ethan swallowed hard, forcing his body to move, to bend down, to gather the shattered pieces at his feet like it was the only thing anchoring him to reality. But his mind was already unraveling, already racing ahead. Because nothing about this was coincidence. Not Liam being here. Not the way he carried himself like someone protected, someone important. Not the fact that he could look straight at Ethan and see nothing at all. As Ethan straightened slowly, his fingers tightening around the empty tray, one thought pressed itself forward with quiet, undeniable certainty. This was not over. Not even close. The sound of breaking glass faded quickly, absorbed by the quiet efficiency of the staff. But the tension it left behind lingered in Ethan's chest like a weight he could not shake off. He forced himself to move, to step back as another waiter knelt to clean the mess. But his attention stayed locked on Liam. It was subtle at first. The way the host approached their table with a lowered voice. The way the manager himself appeared, offering a slight bow that he never gave to regular guests. This was not just another reservation. This was someone important. Ethan noticed the details he had trained himself to see. The table was not on the main floor but near the corridor that led to the private dining suites. The lighting there was softer, more controlled. Fewer eyes. More privacy. Liam was not alone either. A tall alpha sat across from him, dressed in a tailored suit that fit too perfectly to be anything but custom-made. His posture was relaxed, confident in a way that came from power, not arrogance. He spoke quietly, leaning slightly toward Liam as if the rest of the world did not matter. Ethan's jaw tightened just a fraction. He should not care. He had no right to care. But his instincts did not listen to reason. They reacted to presence, to proximity, to the unmistakable bond that still lingered somewhere beneath the surface. He watched as a staff member approached their table with a discreet nod and then gestured toward the hallway. The alpha beside Liam stood first, offering a hand with practiced ease. Liam hesitated for the smallest moment before accepting it. That hesitation did not look like discomfort. It looked like uncertainty. Ethan caught that detail immediately. The two of them were guided away from the main dining area, past the velvet rope that separated ordinary guests from those who required privacy. The door to one of the private rooms opened smoothly, and they disappeared inside without a single glance back. Ethan stood there longer than he should have. One of the other waiters brushed past him, muttering something under his breath about staying focused, but Ethan barely heard it. His mind was already turning, piecing things together whether he wanted it to or not. Liam was not supposed to be here, not like this, not protected, not accompanied by someone like that. This was not coincidence. He exhaled slowly, steadying his breathing, then turned toward the service station as if everything was normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. As he reached for a clean cloth, he noticed something else. The manager was watching him. Not with irritation this time, but with something sharper. Careful. Measuring. It lasted only a second before the man looked away. But it was enough. Ethan had worked here long enough to understand hierarchy. Managers did not study waiters like that. Not unless there was a reason. Not unless they knew something. Ethan lowered his gaze, keeping his movements controlled. But inside, a quiet realization settled in. Liam was not just a guest. And whatever situation had brought him here, it was bigger than a simple reunion. Much bigger. Ethan tightened his grip on the cloth in his hand, his thoughts narrowing into something colder, more focused. He could not walk into that private room. Not yet. Not like this. But he did not need to rush. He had learned patience the hard way. And if Liam was here, in this place, under this kind of protection, then there was only one truth left to face. This meeting had been arranged. And that meant someone wanted Liam exactly where he was. The corridor leading to the private dining rooms was quieter than the main floor. The air cooler, the lighting dimmed just enough to make everything feel distant from reality. Ethan moved with purpose now, a fresh tray balanced in his hand as if he had been assigned to serve inside. No one stopped him. No one questioned him. That alone told him everything he needed to know. Access here was controlled, but not for him. Not tonight. As he reached the door, he paused for a fraction of a second, steadying his breathing. Then he knocked once and stepped inside. The room was smaller than he expected, but every detail was precise. Soft lighting, a single table, no distractions. Liam sat on one side, his posture straight but not relaxed. The alpha from before stood near the window, his back partially turned, speaking in a low voice into a phone before ending the call without a word. Ethan kept his eyes lowered as he stepped forward, placing the tray down carefully. "Your drinks," he said, his voice even, controlled. Liam did not look at him immediately. That small delay felt heavier than anything else. When he finally did, his gaze lingered for a moment longer than before. Not recognition, not yet, but something. A faint crease formed between his brows, as if something did not quite settle in his mind. Ethan felt it too. A pull. Faint but undeniable. It was not just memory. It was instinct. The kind that did not disappear, no matter what was taken from the mind. The alpha beside Liam noticed the pause. His eyes shifted toward Ethan, sharp and assessing, as if measuring him in a way that went beyond a simple waiter. "That will be all," the alpha said. His voice was calm, but there was a quiet authority in it that expected obedience. Ethan nodded slightly, but he did not move right away. Not yet, because now that he was close, there was no room left for doubt. The scent was stronger here, unmasked by distance. Liam's natural scent, softened and altered by pregnancy, but still unmistakable. And beneath it, something else. Something new. Ethan's chest tightened as his senses aligned with brutal clarity. It was there, faint, but present. A second heartbeat carried in scent, not sound. A connection that should not have existed unless it belonged to him. His mind did not need to calculate anymore. It already knew. The child Liam carried was his. Not possibility, not assumption, truth. Ethan exhaled slowly, his fingers tightening just slightly against the edge of the tray before he released it. He forced himself to step back, to turn as if he were leaving, but the moment had already shifted. Liam spoke. "Wait." The word was quiet, uncertain, but it stopped Ethan instantly. He turned back, meeting Liam's eyes fully this time. There was confusion there now, a deeper kind. Not recognition, but something close enough to make the air between them feel heavier. "Have we met before?" Liam asked. The question was simple, too simple for what it carried. Ethan held his gaze for a moment longer than he should have. Every instinct in him pushed forward, demanding truth, demanding clarity. But he held it back. Not here. Not like this. Not with that alpha watching every movement. So he shook his head once, controlled, distant. "No, sir," he replied. The lie settled between them immediately, quiet but solid. Liam's expression did not change much, but the crease in his brow remained, as if something inside him refused to accept that answer completely. The alpha's gaze sharpened, lingering on Ethan for a second longer before dismissing him entirely. "You may go," he said. This time, Ethan did not hesitate. He stepped out of the room, closing the door behind him with steady hands. But the moment it shut, his composure cracked just enough for the truth to surface fully. The child was his. And Liam was already starting to feel it, even without remembering why. Chapter 2. The man behind the uniform. The door closed behind Ethan with a quiet click, but the sound seemed to echo far longer in his mind than it should have. He stood still for a moment in the hallway, the cool air pressing against his skin as if trying to pull him back into control. It almost worked. Almost. But the moment replayed again and again. Liam's voice. That single question. "Have we met before?" Ethan exhaled slowly, dragging a hand across his jaw before forcing himself to move. Standing still would only draw attention. And attention was the last thing he needed right now. He returned to the main floor with measured steps, blending back into the rhythm of the restaurant as if nothing had happened. Orders were called. Glasses were refilled. Conversations flowed in low, controlled tones. Everything was exactly as it should be, except it was not. Because now Ethan was aware of every detail in a way he had not been before. The manager avoided him. Not openly, not enough for anyone else to notice, but it was there. Subtle shifts. A glance that lingered too long before quickly looking away. Instructions delivered through another staff member instead of directly. That was not normal. Not for someone in Ethan's position. Not for a waiter who was supposed to be invisible. Ethan noticed something else too. The alpha who had accompanied Liam had not come back out. That meant the meeting inside was not brief. It was deliberate, planned, important. Ethan moved to the service station, picking up another tray as if he were simply continuing his shift, but his mind was already working through the pieces. This place was not just a restaurant. Not at this level. Not with private rooms like that. Not with guests like them. Deals happened here. Arrangements. Conversations that were not meant to be overheard. And somehow Liam had been brought into it. A voice cut through his thoughts. "You!" Ethan turned slightly. One of the senior staff stood nearby, watching him with an expression that was too careful to be casual. "You are assigned to the north section now," the man said, his tone controlled. Ethan nodded once. Understood. The change did not make sense. That section was further from the private rooms, further from Liam. It was not a coincidence. It was a redirection. Someone wanted him away from that hallway. Ethan accepted it without argument, but the realization settled deeper in his chest. They were watching him, or at least someone was making sure he did not get too close again. He moved to the new section, setting down a glass of water for a guest without missing a step, but his focus remained divided. Every sound from the hallway, every shift in movement from the staff, he tracked it all without looking like he was paying attention. That was something he had learned long before this job. How to observe without being noticed. How to exist in plain sight while remaining unreadable. It had kept him alive before. It was keeping him here now. Minutes passed, then more. Long enough for the rhythm of the restaurant to settle again. And then, finally, the door opened. Ethan did not turn immediately. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he adjusted a napkin, his movements steady, his expression neutral. But he watched through the reflection in the polished glass beside him. Liam stepped out first. His posture was composed, but there was a slight tension in his shoulders that had not been there before. The alpha followed close behind, his presence as controlled as ever, but his gaze shifted once across the room. Not randomly, directly toward Ethan. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. Ethan felt it. That look was not curiosity. It was recognition of something deeper. Not who he was. Not yet, but enough to mark him as someone who did not fully belong in this role. Ethan lowered his gaze immediately, playing his part without hesitation. But inside, something had already shifted. This was no longer just about Liam, and it was no longer just about the child. There were layers here: control, surveillance, intention, and somehow, without meaning to, Ethan had stepped back into the center of it. He tightened his grip on the tray in his hand, his thoughts narrowing into something sharp and focused. Because one thing was already clear. He was not just a waiter in this story, and whoever that alpha was had already started to notice. The shift in the room did not disappear after that glance. It lingered, quiet but persistent, like something just beneath the surface waiting to be understood. Ethan kept his focus on the table in front of him, refilling a glass with steady hands, but his awareness stretched far beyond that simple task. He could feel it. The tension had followed them out of the private room. Liam paused near the entrance to the main dining area, his fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the chair beside him as if grounding himself. The alpha at his side spoke again, low and controlled, but Liam did not immediately respond. That hesitation returned. Not fear. Not resistance. Something else. Something uncertain. Ethan noticed it immediately. He noticed everything about Liam now in a way that felt almost instinctive. The way his shoulders held a subtle strain, as if carrying something unseen. The way his gaze drifted for just a second too long before refocusing. And then, it happened again. Liam looked at him. This time there was no interruption, no distraction, just a direct, steady gaze that held for longer than it should have. Ethan felt it land like a quiet impact. Not recognition, but not nothing either. Liam's expression shifted slightly, his brows drawing together again in that same faint crease. His lips parted as if he were about to say something, but no words came. The alpha noticed it this time. His attention sharpened instantly, his posture adjusting in a way that was almost imperceptible to anyone else in the room. But Ethan saw it. He saw the subtle way the man stepped half a pace closer, not touching Liam, but positioning himself just enough to interrupt whatever was about to happen. "Is something wrong?" the alpha asked. His tone was smooth, neutral, but there was an edge beneath it now. Controlled. Observing. Liam blinked once, as if pulled back from somewhere deeper than the room itself. He shook his head lightly. "No, I just thought." He stopped himself. The sentence did not finish. Ethan held his breath without meaning to, because for a moment, just a brief, fragile moment, it felt like Liam was about to remember. But he did not. Liam's gaze shifted away, the connection breaking as cleanly as it had formed. "It is nothing," he said quietly. The Alpha studied him for a second longer before nodding once. "We should leave." There was no argument, no hesitation this time. Liam followed, his steps measured, his expression composed again, but the tension had not fully disappeared. Ethan watched them move toward the exit, his grip tightening slightly around the tray in his hand. Something inside him resisted letting that moment go, because it had not been empty. It had not been imagined. Liam had felt something, even without memory, even without understanding why. That meant the connection was still there, and that changed everything. As the door opened and the cool night air slipped briefly into the restaurant, Ethan caught one last detail. Liam's hand moved again, this time resting lightly against his stomach. The gesture was small, almost unconscious, but it was enough. Ethan's chest tightened as a quiet certainty settled deeper inside him. Liam might not remember him, but his body did. The child did, and whatever had been taken from his mind had not erased everything. The door closed behind them, and the space they left behind felt colder somehow. Ethan stood there for a second longer than he should have before forcing himself to move again. The rhythm of the restaurant continued, unchanged on the surface. But for Ethan, nothing was the same anymore, because now he knew. Liam was not just someone from his past. He was someone still connected to him in ways that could not be undone. And more importantly, someone was standing between them, not by accident, not by chance, but by design. Ethan lowered his gaze, his expression returning to neutral as he stepped forward to clear another table. But his thoughts had already shifted into something sharper, more focused. This was no longer about waiting for answers. It was about finding them, because whatever had been done to Liam had been done for a reason, and Ethan intended to uncover it, no matter what it cost. The rest of the night passed in a blur of controlled motion and quiet observation, but Ethan did not miss a single detail. He finished his shift without error, without drawing attention, and without letting the storm inside him show on his face. That alone took more effort than anything else. By the time he stepped out into the cool night air behind the restaurant, the city felt different, sharper, louder, more real. He loosened the collar of his uniform slightly, inhaling deeply as if the outside air could clear the weight that had settled in his chest. It did not. Liam's face lingered in his mind, not as a memory, but as something unfinished, something wrong. Ethan had spent years learning how to separate instinct from assumption, how to question what felt obvious. And right now, everything about Liam's condition felt wrong. It was not just the lack of recognition. It was the gaps around it. The way Liam almost remembered, then did not. The way his reactions came half a second too late, like something inside him was being filtered before it reached the surface. Ethan leaned against the brick wall for a moment, closing his eyes briefly as he replayed every second of the encounter. The hesitation, the question, the confusion. Those were not the signs of someone who had simply moved on. Those were the signs of something missing, or worse, something removed. He exhaled slowly, pushing himself upright again. There had to be a reason. No one lost that kind of connection completely. Not in their world. Not when bonds ran deeper than memory, deeper than logic. And Liam had felt something. That much was clear. Which meant whatever had been done to him had not been perfect. Ethan's thoughts sharpened around that realization. Imperfect meant vulnerable. Vulnerable meant traceable. And traceable meant it could be undone. But not without understanding what had been done in the first place. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen for a moment before he made a decision. There was only one way to confirm it. He scrolled through a list of contacts that had not been touched in a long time, names that belonged to a life he had buried along with everything else. For a second, he hesitated. Calling anyone from that world meant stepping back into it. It meant being seen again. But the image of Liam, standing there with that empty recognition, settled the hesitation quickly. Ethan tapped the screen. The call connected after only a few rings. "I need information," Ethan said quietly, his voice low but steady. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a voice that sounded both surprised and cautious. "You disappeared," the voice replied. "And now you are calling me for information?" Ethan did not react to that. "I need to know if there have been cases," he continued, his tone unchanged, "of memory interference, not natural, not trauma, something controlled." Silence followed, longer this time. Then, finally, "That is not something people ask about casually," the voice said. "Who is involved?" Ethan's grip tightened slightly around the phone. He glanced back toward the restaurant, though he knew Liam was long gone. "Someone who should remember me," he said, "but does not." Another pause. Then a quiet exhale. "If what you are describing is real," the voice said slowly, "then it is not simple. Memory like that does not just disappear. It has to be altered, suppressed, or rewritten." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Can it be reversed?" This time, the answer did not come immediately. When it did, it was quieter, more careful. "Sometimes," the voice replied. "But if someone powerful enough did it, then you are not just dealing with memory. You are dealing with control." The line went silent again after that, but Ethan did not need anything more. The pieces were already falling into place. Liam had not forgotten him. Liam had been made to forget, and the alpha who stood beside him was no longer just a coincidence. Ethan lowered the phone slowly, his expression hardening as the last layer of uncertainty disappeared. This was not an accident. This was not time or distance or choice. This was something done with intention. And if someone had taken Liam's memories, then Ethan was going to take them back. Chapter 3. The Man Who Owns the Truth. Ethan did not sleep that night. He lay on the narrow bed in his apartment, staring at the ceiling as the city lights filtered through the blinds in thin, shifting lines. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same moment. Liam's gaze, that flicker of something almost familiar, and then nothing. It was not just absence. It was interference. By the time the first light of morning touched the edge of the room, Ethan was already moving. He had made his decision hours ago. Waiting was no longer an option. If someone had taken Liam's memories, then that someone had a system, and systems always left patterns. Ethan arrived at the restaurant earlier than his shift required. The building was quieter at this hour, the polished exterior hiding the layers beneath it. He entered through the staff door, nodding once to the early crew, his expression neutral, his movements routine. But his attention was sharper now, tuned to details he had ignored before. Security cameras, access points, the timing of deliveries. This place was not just a restaurant. It was a controlled environment. And that meant whoever had brought Liam here trusted it, or owned it. Ethan moved toward the service hallway, but before he could reach it, a voice stopped him. "You are early." He turned. The manager stood a few feet away, his posture straight, his eyes steady in a way that no longer felt casual. Ethan gave a small nod. "I had time." The man studied him for a second longer, then stepped closer. "You were not assigned to that section last night," he said. It was not a question. Ethan met his gaze without hesitation. "I followed instructions." Another pause. Then the manager's expression shifted, just slightly. Not softer, not friendlier, just certain. "Do not go near the private rooms again," he said quietly. Ethan did not respond right away, because now it was clear. This was not about a mistake. This was about control, and control always had a source. "Understood," Ethan replied finally, his tone even. The manager held his gaze for a moment longer, then turned and walked away without another word. Ethan watched him go, his thoughts narrowing into something colder. That was confirmation. The private rooms were connected, protected, and whatever had happened to Liam was tied to that space. But the manager was not the one making decisions. He was enforcing them, which meant the real authority was somewhere above him. Ethan exhaled slowly, adjusting his sleeves as if nothing had changed. But inside, the direction was already set. He did not need to force his way in. He just needed to follow the pattern. And the pattern had already revealed itself once. The Alpha, the man who had stood beside Liam, the one who had watched him, the one who had interrupted that moment before it could become something more. That was not coincidence. That was intervention. Ethan moved through the morning preparations, his actions precise, his attention divided. He listened without appearing to listen. Conversations between staff, small mentions of reservations, names that were spoken with care. And then he heard it. Not directly, not announced, just a passing comment between two senior staff members. "The guest from last night is returning," one of them said quietly. Same room. Ethan did not react. Not outwardly, but something inside him settled into place with absolute clarity. This was not over. It was continuing. And this time he would be ready, because now he knew where to look. Not at Liam. Not yet. But at the man standing beside him. The one who controlled access. The one who watched too closely. The one who had made sure Liam never remembered. Ethan picked up a tray, his movements calm, his expression unchanged, but his focus locked onto a single, undeniable truth. If he wanted answers, he would have to go through him. And this time, he would not stay in the background. The day moved slower than it should have, each minute stretching under the weight of anticipation. But Ethan never lost focus. By the time evening settled in and the restaurant began to fill again, everything was already in motion. The reservation had been confirmed. Same private room, same guest. Ethan adjusted his uniform in the reflection of the polished glass, his expression calm, controlled, but his eyes sharper than they had been in years. He was done reacting. Tonight, he would observe with purpose. When Liam arrived, it was different this time. Not rushed, not uncertain. He walked in with quiet composure, guided once again by the same Alpha. The man's presence had not changed. Still precise, still controlled. But now that Ethan was looking for it, the details stood out more clearly. The way staff stepped aside before being asked. The way the manager personally greeted him with a lowered voice. This was not influence. This was authority. Ethan followed at a distance, his movements seamless as he carried a tray toward the hallway. No one stopped him again. Not this time, because no one expected him to be watching like this. As they entered the private room, Ethan slowed just enough to catch a final detail before the door closed. Liam's hand rested briefly against his stomach again, his fingers pressing lightly as if responding to something only he could feel. It was instinct, unfiltered, and it meant the connection was still there, stronger than anything done to his memory. Ethan stepped past the door, but instead of leaving, he paused at the service panel built discreetly into the wall. Most staff ignored it. It was used for silent communication between kitchen and service. But Ethan knew better. He had known about it long before he ever wore this uniform. With a controlled motion, he pressed his hand against the panel, activating the thin audio feed that carried voices from inside the room. It was faint, filtered, but enough. He listened. First, only low conversation, controlled, measured. Then, Liam's voice, quieter than before. "You said it would not affect me like this." A pause. The Alpha responded, his tone calm, almost reassuring. "It is temporary. Your body is adjusting. That is all." Ethan's breath slowed, his focus sharpening as every word settled into place. Liam spoke again, softer now. "Then why do I feel like something is missing?" Silence followed, longer this time. Then the Alpha's voice returned, colder beneath the surface. "Because you are not meant to remember everything." Ethan felt it then. Not just confirmation, not just suspicion. Truth. Clear and undeniable. This man was not just protecting Liam. He was controlling him. And whatever had been taken deliberately. Ethan stepped back from the panel slowly, his expression unchanged, but something inside him had shifted completely. The uncertainty was gone. The doubt was gone. In its place was something far more dangerous. Clarity, because now he knew exactly who stood between him and Liam. And more importantly, he knew this was never going to be resolved quietly. Whoever that alpha was had built this situation with intention. But intention could be broken, and Ethan had already decided. He was going to break it. The moment the door to the private room opened, Ethan did not wait this time. He stepped forward before the staff could redirect him, before the manager could intervene. His movements calm but absolute. The alpha inside looked up instantly, his expression sharpening as recognition flickered across his face. Not of identity but of intent. Ethan did not stop. He walked straight into the room, closing the distance until there was no space left for avoidance. Liam turned at the sound, his eyes landing on Ethan with that same confusion, that same unfinished recognition. But this time it did not fade. It lingered. Ethan held his gaze, steady and unyielding, ignoring everything else in the room. "That child," he said, his voice low but clear, "is mine." The words did not echo loudly, but they landed with enough force to change the air completely. The alpha stepped forward immediately, his presence cutting in like a barrier. "You are out of line," he said, his tone controlled but edged with warning. Ethan did not look at him. Not yet, because Liam had not looked away. Something had shifted in his expression, something deeper than confusion now. His hand moved instinctively to his stomach again, his breath catching slightly as if his body recognized the truth before his mind could accept it. I do not." Liam started, but the words faltered. His gaze locked onto Ethan's, searching, pulling at something buried. Ethan took one step closer, slow enough not to startle, but deliberate enough to break through the distance that had been forced between them. "You do," he said quietly. "You just cannot remember why." The alpha moved again, faster this time, placing himself fully between them. "Enough," he said, his voice colder now. "You will leave." Ethan finally turned his eyes to him, and for the first time, there was no trace of the invisible waiter left. "You altered his memory," Ethan said. Not a question, a statement. The silence that followed was brief, but it was all the confirmation needed. The alpha did not deny it. Instead, he exhaled slowly, his posture straightening as if the pretense was no longer necessary. "He was not safe with you," he said. "His future required stability, control." Ethan's expression did not change, but something sharper settled behind his eyes. Control is not the same as choice. Liam's breath came uneven now, his fingers tightening against his shirt as if something inside him was pushing back. His gaze shifted between them, the confusion turning into something more urgent. "Stop," he said quietly, his voice strained. "Something is wrong." The alpha's attention snapped back to him immediately. "You are fine," he said, stepping closer, his tone softening in a practiced way. "It is just stress." But Liam shook his head, his eyes still locked on Ethan. "No, it is not." His breathing hitched again, sharper this time, and then it happened. Not all at once, not clean, but enough. Flash, a memory breaking through the surface. Liam staggered slightly, his hand pressing harder against his stomach as if anchoring himself. His eyes widened, not in fear, but in realization. "Ethan," he whispered. The name landed softly, but it changed everything. The alpha froze for the first time, his control slipping just enough to show it. Ethan did not move. He did not need to, because the moment had already shifted beyond anyone's control. Liam looked at him fully now, recognition clear, undeniable, even if incomplete. Tears gathered in his eyes, not from pain, but from something returning, something that had been taken. "You," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "You were there before." Ethan nodded once, steady, grounded. "I still am." The room fell silent after that, but it was no longer empty. The control that had held everything in place had cracked, and through it, something real had begun to surface. The Alpha straightened slowly, his expression hardening again as he realized what had been lost. But it was already too late. Liam's memory had not fully returned, but it had started. And that was enough, because now the truth existed again. Not hidden, not erased. Ethan stepped back finally, not as retreat, but as certainty. He did not need to fight here. Not anymore. He had already won the only battle that mattered. As he turned toward the door, Liam's voice followed him, softer now, but clear. Do not disappear again. Ethan paused for a fraction of a second, then answered without turning back. I will not. And this time it was the truth.